Let's stay on Transnet-related matters, where we're seeing that two suspects are expected to appear before the Amersfort Magistrate Court. Now, they were arrested for tampering and, of course, damaging essential railway infrastructure. We've got Professor Bonke Dumisa, who says that the post-apartheid government has dropped the ball when it comes to maintaining law and order and rail transport. He joins us now for more on this. Prof, thank you very much for your time, as always. And I suppose this is something that, as you say, the ball was dropped on Transnet and its rail infrastructure for decades. And now that something needs to be done, I suppose people don't even know where to start when it comes to realigning or refurbishing our railway infrastructure. What are your thoughts on the current situation?
The current situation is very disappointing. And I don't want to point fingers, but as you've rightly said, I did write that the post-apartheid government dropped the ball when it comes to law and order and the rail network in South Africa. And for us to get back to where we were before 1994, when it comes to rail network, we've got to attend to a number of things. If we don't attend to a number of those things that I will mention, then we will not be sorting out the problem. And as the Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. David Masondo, has just said here on the program, that it is unfortunate then that people believe that the government must always be bailing out SOEs who cannot generate their own revenue. And Transnet is one of those. And it is against that background then that some of us are saying the workers, yes, we understand everyone is facing the issue of rising cost of living globally. But if ever they use this opportunity to say they just want high salaries for themselves without looking at the implications for the fiscus, then we as a country are doomed.
No, absolutely. And I mean, let's talk about some of those implementations or components that need to be considered by Transnet as it starts to pick up the pieces. And at least we see some kind of improvements in that infrastructure. Please just talk us through what those immediate focus points should be.
Okay, the issue of lawlessness, when we look the CEO of Transnet, Ms. Portia Debbie, has just mentioned something about people who were arrested, or it was your representative about people who were arrested for cable theft. The cable theft issue has been going on for ages now, and it is not being resolved. And the major thing which everyone knows in South Africa, including the police, is that cable theft is much easier in South Africa as it is than it was in the past, because the police are afraid of arresting people who are doing wrong for different reasons. Let me not get into that one. But the mere fact that people who brazenly steal overhead copper cables are hardly arrested, and the people who even cut the railway tracks are hardly arrested, is a cause for concern. And there are scrapyards all over the country who are known to be having these things. They don't hide it, but you hardly hear about those people being arrested until the police do what we saw them doing when they were arrested illegal miners in Gauteng, and or was it in the Northwest, and confiscated many illegal firearms. Then the whole problem about Transnet will continue. The other issue which Transnet has got to face, and I think Portia Debbie slightly referred to it, Transnet is always facing this problem of industrial strife. As I said, Transnet workers are part of the global village where things are happening all over, including South Africa. They are not any different. So for them to expect I'm going back to this thing for a reason. To expect that they'll be treated differently is unfair. Because what is happening, one of the things which is pushing the companies from using Transnet as it is now is that there is no accountability in as far as many workers at Transnet are concerned. So when people put their goods there, they are not assured that they will be safe, because people who can tamper with them will be defended by the trade unions, and then the whole thing just goes on. And that's why then many companies are just moving their goods away from rail to the road, which is not good for our road infrastructure. But the other thing which we've got to say, we must consider, yes, we've got our constitution, which we are proud of, and some of us did contribute to some of its chapters. However, people are also abusing the constitutional right to the use of the PI Act, Prevention of Illegal Evictions Act. So people deliberately invade Transnet properties. And when they invade Transnet properties, even building on top of the railway tracks, the Transnet finds it very difficult to remove them, because there is a certain provision of the PI Act which says that if you remove people from private land, you must provide them with alternative accommodation. So when Transnet is battling to have its own money, how can it start settling for people who deliberately invaded its own land? So these are all the things which must be attended to, and everyone is responsible for making sure that these are done. But unfortunately, we are very reluctant to enforce law in South Africa as it is now, because we do not want to be unpopular. And that is the downfall of South Africa.
It really is, Prof. And I'm just wondering, as you speak, the collaborative efforts between SAPS and the state-owned entities like Transnet, and in other instances, Eskom, where there has been allegations of sabotage in many instances, is going to be critical, empowering the SAPS even more to do their jobs, but also collaborative partnerships that are created so that at least we can start to move on those components that you've just eloquently broken down for us. Do you think that this is a possibility, given the current state of affairs, where we can see some or other form of partnership, a stronger, solid partnership between the SOEs and our law enforcement agencies?
I think, as I said, we need the political will to correct this thing. If the South African government can have the political will to make sure then that SAPS do their work. In the past, the South African Railways Services, you had their own South African Railway Police. I can tell you, people were not messing around with those people, because they knew if ever you messed up with them, you'll end up in jail, or even when you are dead, they'll put handcuffs on you before you're buried. So I'm not saying we must go back to those extreme things, but the manner in which things are happening, it just gives the impression to the wrongdoers that they can do as they please, because the government is afraid to act. Until we are acting decisively, as we are beginning to act decisively against illegal miners, the problem with Transnet will just continue, and people will just keep on putting their goods on the road.
Yeah, and then finally, and very briefly, I'm glad you bring up the road infrastructure and the pressure that has increased over the years because of the trucks and the goods that they are now ferrying on the roads. That obviously has major economic implications. If we're not seeing delays at ports and backlogs because of the strike right now, as an example, but the lackluster infrastructure that exists means that a lot of businesses are either not meeting their deadlines in terms of transporting goods on time, or they're spending a lot more in terms of diesel and other fuels to make sure that there's the steady streamlining of whatever they've promised their markets, whether they be internal or export markets.
It is affecting the South African economy dearly, and unfortunately, that is going to push other producers and other companies to move their use of harbors from South Africa to Mozambique and such other places. We need to address this thing very quickly, and not just for Transnet to declare force majeure, saying that things are beyond their control. But it's something which needs collective effort from all parties, government, business, and even us as the communities, to say we cannot do with a very fragile and inefficient Transnet.